You know that highly specific kind of slightly irrational feeling you get?
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, like when you're walking down a perfectly normal hallway in your own home, right? It's the dead of night, and suddenly you have this overwhelming urge to just look over your shoulder.
Yes, absolutely. The classic sudden dread.
Exactly. And I mean, it's just a hallway. It's just your hallway. But
Yeah.
for a split second, the shadows seem, I don't know, just a little too thick.
Like something's there.
Right. And that feeling, that is not just your imagination acting up. That is the exact psychological threshold that Gothic literature has been, well, basically exploiting since the 18th century.
It really is.
So today we are taking you on a deep dive into this incredibly comprehensive curriculum on the Gothic. And the mission here is to prove that these stories are not just, a collection of cheap jump scares.
Right, or just people wearing black clothing, hanging out in crumbling graveyards.
Yeah, exactly. We want to discover how this genre functions as a literal blueprint for human anxiety.
Because we so frequently dismiss these narratives, like as mere seasonal entertainment. We categorize them as just spooky fiction and kind of relegate them to the back shelf.
Yeah, just pull them out for Halloween.
Right. But the source material we are examining today, it demonstrates that these stories operate as vital mechanical barometers.
Barometers.
Yeah, they measure the atmospheric pressure of our collective cultural terrors. They adapt to whatever a given society is most desperately trying to repress at the time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the curriculum begins by defining what the word Gothic actually means in a literary context.
Right, which is important to clarify.
Yeah, and the defining framework they use is this concept of the literature of thresholds, with a threshold being a physical or like a psychological boundary line.
Exactly. It's the space between, say, reason and superstition, or civilization and the wilderness.
Life and death.
Yeah, life and death. It's like you are standing in the known empirical world, but you're gazing directly into the shadows of the completely unknown.
It's that terrifying but exhilarating feeling, like standing right on the edge of a dense forest. Your feet are on the paved road, you are perfectly safe, but you are irresistibly drawn to just stare into the tree line.
Yes, looking for what's hiding in the dark.
Right. But, I mean, I struggle to buy the idea, however, that 18th century readers were staging some grand, philosophical rebellion.
How do you mean?
Well, the source points to Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, published in 1764. Right?
Yep, 1764, ground zero for the genre.
Right, as ground zero. But weren't these readers just bored? I mean, it feels like we might be elevating what was essentially an 18th century jump scare into this profound societal critique.
I get that. I really do. I mean, it is super tempting to dismiss early works like Otranto as mere pulp fiction, but we really have to look at the psychological vacuum that was created by the Enlightenment.
The Age of Reason.
Exactly. You have this massive historical period where society is forcefully told that logic, reason, and empirical science have all the answers.
Right, everything can be calculated.
Yeah, the mathematical formula becomes the ultimate truth, and ancient superstitions are suddenly mocked. They're totally uncool.
Outdated.
Right. But human beings are inherently irrational creatures.
You really are.
We are. And if a culture tries to completely pave over the wilderness of human emotion with cold logic, the human psyche eventually just suffocates.
Oh, wow. So Walpole was basically providing oxygen.
That's exactly it. He provided oxygen.
He built a literary laboratory where the irrational was allowed to just exist again.
Precisely. By combining medieval settings, unexplained supernatural events, and dark family secrets, Walpole didn't just write a thriller. He created a safe, fictional threshold.
So readers could stand in the safety of their, enlightened modern drawing rooms.
Right by the fire.
Yeah, and stare into the dark forest of their own doubts about modern progress.
Exactly. The Gothic thrives dynamically as a response to societal uncertainty. When society is told science has totally conquered nature, the Gothic asks, well, what happens when nature fights back?
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the writers of the Romantic era, who follow right on the heels of the 18th century, they grab hold of that Burkean concept of the sublime.
The sublime, yes, a crucial shift.
Yeah, they move away from relying entirely on, haunted castles and start utilizing vast, terrifying natural landscapes.
Moving it outside.
Right. It's the idea that true awe requires a looming threat of danger, like standing at the edge of a jagged cliff during a violent storm, rather than just, admiring a pretty manicured garden.
Because a manicured garden is safe, that looming threat of danger you mentioned, that is the core mechanism of the sublime. It forces the reader to confront their own total insignificance.
Which the Romantics loved.
They did. The Romantics looked at the cold calculation of the Enlightenment and just totally rejected the premise that a spreadsheet can explain the human condition.
You can't put a storm in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. So they use these towering, jagged mountains, world-ending storms, and forgotten, ruined landscapes as physical manifestations of forces that are vastly larger than human comprehension.
And we see that mechanical shift perfectly realized when we hit the 19th century.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein takes those core Gothic anxieties and applies them directly to the bleeding edge of contemporary fears.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. The monster isn't some ghost summoned by an ancient curse. The monster is the direct mechanical result of a modern man pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge way too far.
Which was a very real fear at the time. Shelley taps directly into the scientific debates of 1818.
Right, because people were seeing this stuff in real life.
They were. The public was attending these literal demonstrations of galvanism.
That's where there were shocking things, right?
Yes, watching scientists apply electrical currents to dead frogs, making the muscles twitch on a table.
Ugh, that's so wild to think about.
It is. So the anxiety wasn't about medieval magic anymore. It was about the terrifying possibility that mankind was on the verge of usurping the role of a creator.
Creating life itself.
Exactly. The Gothic adapts its machinery. The monster basically becomes the progress itself.
The very thing we thought would elevate us is the thing that ends up chasing us across the Arctic ice.
Precisely.
And shortly after Shelley shows us the horrors of external progress, Edgar Allan Poe comes along and changes the architecture of the genre entirely.
He really flips the script.
Yeah, he takes the terror and moves it completely inward. With Poe, the threat isn't a reanimated corpse roaming the countryside. The threat is, well, your own mind.
Right. Poe transforms the very setting of the Gothic into a psychological map.
Like in The Fall of the House of Usher.
That's the perfect example. We have this decaying, crumbling mansion with a physical fissure, a crack running right down the masonry.
But that's not just a bad foundation.
No, that architecture is operating as a direct reflection of Roderick Usher's decaying, fracturing psyche. Yeah. Poe explores madness, profound guilt, blinding obsession, and total psychological collapse. The haunted house is merely the physical manifestation of a broken human mind.
But once Poe demonstrated that the most terrifying monsters actually live inside our own heads, society faced a whole new problem.
They definitely did.
Because what happens when an entire culture is obsessed with outward perfection, but secretly terrified of their own inner primal thoughts?
Welcome to the Victorian era.
Exactly. Moving into the Victorian era, it feels less like a cultural pressure cooker and more like a corset.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, Victorian society was restricting its outward appearance to achieve this unnatural standard of civilization, pulling the laces tighter and tighter, but causing intense internal damage and restricting their breathing in the process.
And eventually those laces have to snap.
They always do.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Victorian era was defined by this profound hypocrisy.
Right. Proper on the streets, scandalous in the sheets.
Pretty much. I mean, they were projecting ultimate imperial control and moral superiority. Yet they were secretly consumed by the new theories of early psychology and, crucially, Charles Darwin's evolutionary biology.
Because Darwin ruined the narrative that humans were somehow separate from animals.
Exactly. The scientific revelation that humans shared ancestry with animals birthed this widespread cultural terror known as degeneration theory.
Which was the fear that if we evolved from a primal state, we could basically devolve right back down into it.
Yes, that the civilized facade was completely fragile.
Just one bad day away from being an animal again.
Right, and that specific anxiety necessitates the emergence of the literary double.
The doppelganger.
Yes, Robert Louis Stevenson's Grace. The strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is not just a spooky story about a potion, it is a mechanical exploration of the divided subconscious.
Jekyll and Hyde are the same person.
Exactly. Jekyll represents the tightly laced Victorian corset, the respectable, moral, outward-facing citizen.
And
Hyde is the repressed, primal urge breaking free. The real horror lies in the revelation that Hyde isn't an external invader. He is an integral part of Jekyll's own nature.
You can't escape him because he's you.
Exactly.
That fear of invasion, though, it takes on an entirely different dimension when we look at Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Absolutely.
It's wild to think that Dracula isn't just a folklore tale about a guy with fangs and a cape.
Not at all.
According to the source, it's an intricate mechanism designed to process Victorian fears about the vulnerability of the entire British Empire.
It really is. The mechanics of vampirism in Dracula tap into multiple overlapping Victorian terrors.
Like what?
Well, first, you have reverse colonization.
Reverse colonization.
Yeah. The British Empire had colonized the globe, right? And there was a deep-seated fear that these foreign ancient forces from the edges of the map would come to the heart of London and feed upon the imperial center.
Oh, so Stoker literally makes the monster an aristocratic foreigner who comes in and starts buying up real estate in England.
Exactly. He's buying abbeys and properties. He's invading legally, in a way.
That's fascinating. And there's a medical mechanism at play too, right? The fear of infected blood.
Yes, hugely important. Blood transfusions were just beginning to be understood as a medical practice at the time. And venereal diseases, particularly syphilis, were completely rampant and heavily stigmatized.
So the bite is symbolic.
Very much so. The vampire's bite operates as a powerful analog for the spread of unseen contagion, the corruption of pure bloodlines, and the unleashing of, repressed sexual desires.
So the Victorian Gothic essentially becomes a collision point, where the rigid rules of society literally crash into the messy realities of biology and psychology.
Right.
We even see that collision in the real world of the Victorians, with scientists trying to use new technology like cameras to photograph ghosts.
Spirit photography, yes.
Yeah, or early psychologists trying to map the subconscious mind using spiritualism. It's like science and the supernatural were sharing the exact same vocabulary.
Which is such a weird historical overlap when you think about it.
Totally. And as the reading emphasizes, the genre doesn't just pack up and die when the Victorian era ends. It just mutates.
It mutates because the anxieties mutate.
Right.
The technology changes, the social structures shift, but the underlying human condition remains fractured.
And that's why we get these incredible 20th and 21st century offshoots.
Exactly.
Like the Southern Gothic, which uses the decaying plantations of the American South as its haunted castles, exploring how the horrific legacy of slavery and racial injustice operates as this inescapable ghost that is just continually haunting modern generations.
The trauma of the past living in the present.
Yes. And then you have cosmic horror, or
Yeah.
like Lovecraftian fiction, which takes the threshold we talked about and pushes it all the way out into the stars.
Which is a whole different scale of terror. Cosmic horror is a direct mechanical response to the post-Darwin, post-Einstein realization that the universe is vast, ancient, cold, and entirely indifferent to human existence.
Doesn't even care about us.
Right. The horror isn't that a monster hates you. The horror is that the universe doesn't even know you're there.
Wow.
Yeah, it is the Burkean sublime scaled up to a galactic mind-shattering level.
So what does this all mean? When we trace this timeline, from a fake medieval castle in 1764 to a modern psychological thriller today, the texts reveal a list of core themes that have survived the entire centuries-long journey.
They remain remarkably consistent.
Yeah. Themes like haunted places and liminal spaces, the return of the past, family secrets, inherited guilt, forbidden knowledge, isolation, encounters with the sublime.
A very heavy list.
It is. Reading that list, it feels like an incredibly heavy burden. Like forbidden knowledge and inherited guilt seem to be the inescapable baggage humanity is just forced to carry century after century.
We are perpetually dealing with the ghosts of our past.
Always.
Whether that manifests literally like a phantom walking the halls of Otranto, or metaphorically as the ghosts of historical injustices and generational trauma in the Southern Gothic.
Right.
The Gothic is the architectural space where we are forced to acknowledge that the past is never truly buried. The soil is always disturbed.
But looking at the mechanics of these stories, none of them really offer a solution, do they?
No, they don't.
There is no neat conclusion where society figures out how to banish the guilt or perfectly manage the forbidden knowledge. The curtain just falls.
What's fascinating here is that the curriculum explicitly states the Gothic's most important characteristic is its refusal to provide answers.
It just leaves you hanging.
Yes. It exists to ask questions. It leaves the reader abandoned in the borderlands. Like, are the ghosts real, or are they a manifestation of systemic guilt?
Right. Is the monster external, waiting out there in the dark woods? Or is it internal, festering inside the protagonist's own biology?
Exactly. Is the haunted house actually cursed by supernatural forces? Or is it simply a mirror, forcing its inhabitants to confront the ugly, repressed truths they desperately wish to ignore?
Because in real life, we rarely get clean answers to our own societal terrors.
Almost never.
When we are dealing with our anxieties about the direction our culture is heading, The lines are never black and white. It's usually murky. It's a shadow in the hallway.
That's a great way to put it. The genre invites the reader to do something deeply uncomfortable, but entirely necessary. To walk down those dark corridors, open the locked doors, and confront whatever is waiting on the other side.
Even without the promise of a safe return.
Exactly. Without the promise of a safe return.
Even if what is waiting on the other side is just a reflection of our own society.
Precisely.
Well, our journey today has traced an incredible lineage for you. We started in 1764, watching Horace Walpole build a literary sanctuary for the irrational against the cold logic of the Enlightenment.
A much-needed sanctuary.
Yeah. Then we weathered the violent storms of the Romantics, learning through Mary Shelley that human hubris and scientific progress can become our absolute greatest threats.
The monster of our own making.
Right. We descended into the claustrophobic madness of Edgar Allan Poe, mapping the decaying architecture of the human mind. And we navigated the restrictive corset of Victorian society, unpacking how monsters like Jekyll, Hyde, and Dracula operated as mechanisms to process the terrors of degeneration and invasion.
It is a remarkable evolution. It proves that the Gothic is not a static relic of the past, but an active, ongoing diagnostic tool for human terror.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. The curriculum demonstrates that Gothic literature emerges as a direct response to dizzying scientific discovery, social upheaval, and the realization that the foundations of the known world are shifting.
Which sounds pretty familiar.
It really does. Look at the massive technological leaps we are experiencing right now. The rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence, the editing of the human genome.
The complete algorithmic restructuring of how we perceive reality.
Exactly. Even deepfakes operating as the ultimate digital doubles.
The ground is shifting beneath our feet once again. We are attempting to pave over the unknown with data and code, but the psychological vacuum is reopening.
So when you stare into the thresholds of our modern world today, when you look at the glow of a screen, the complexity of a changing climate, or the vast networks of information that we can no longer fully control, what new monsters do you think are currently being written in the shadows?
What is standing just inside the tree line?
Exactly. Waiting for us to notice it.